going to share some of your thoughts and comments and have a discussion. So, do you want to start with these?
Yeah, okay, so the reason we collected these is because there are so many, and I'm so glad we did this because there's no way to address. These are beautiful, and they're thoughtful, and they're supportive, and some are challenging, you know? Okay, like, would you have had a better outcome if Mandela had just greeted the police? You know, hey, we get those questions constantly. Let's have them. Let's not be afraid. Okay. Someone else said, "How dare you not have given him the talk about being black? That was so irresponsible of you." And I agree. Now that I see how it turned out. So, and we talk about that. We talk about that. Those are important and valid questions. I'm not scared of them. Nobody has to protect me. Okay. I want to read some of these affirmations. Is Mandela adopted? No. People used to say that when I walked around with him. They'd say, "Oh, is he adopted?" And he'd be standing there, and I'd say, "No, I carried him in my stomach upside down." Okay, so someone just said, "Thank you." Someone said, "Thank you." Any thoughts about how to get over the personal defensive reaction to racism, to engage people in conversations thinking about systems? And that is the work. That is the work. Most people, and I did too, thought that what we were talking about were individuals who had bigoted attitudes. And we're not talking about that. We're talking about whole socializations, whole ways of looking at the world, whole ways of growing up in it. I feel like I have a woke crowd here. I'm seeing people not. Did we have some woke people in Baby? Anyway, we do. We do. Baby is woke. This one's really see, now this needs to be a forum. Why did you initially turn down Jeannie Greer? Because I hadn't dealt with white people, and certainly not an aggregate, and certainly not Bayview people. And I've heard a lot of abuse online and so forth. I have a neighbor who was part of the Capitol uprisings. We're friendly, he's wonderful. And I let him know if it came to war, we'd have to kill each other. And then later I said, "You know what, Mike, actually you have the guns, can I come stay in your basement?" But I lost my train of thought. Why did I turn it down? Because I am profoundly traumatized, not just by that incident, but by the many, many comments, lack of comments, blank faces that I've met again and again and again among white people, and particularly people I loved and leaned on. And that was so hurtful that I had to go away and crawl almost into a hole. And I turned it down because I said, and I said it in no uncertain terms to Jeannie, there is no way I'm coming up here with a ripped open heart with my family's experience and have someone turn that into a political controversy. I will not subject myself, my son, or anyone to that. And Jeannie was like, "We got you. We have an education committee. We're, you know." But I did have to spend a lot of time thinking about how not to make this, how to link it to something that would be useful. I'm still not clear how to do that. I really do want to cut through. You're not going to see me in a diversity, equity, and inclusion workshop or a white guilt workshop. Those are wonderful. They have their place. I just know that my life experience gives me a different take and a different way to approach it. I don't know clearly what that will be, so thank you for that question.
Didn't Mandela encourage you?
Oh, I said, have Mandela come up. It's his story. And so I wrote Mandela, and he's like, I would, but, and he really did have something, a wedding. I don't know. I think that was a sketchy. He said, Mom, I really want to encourage you to do it. So I did. And at a certain point, I decided, no, it's my responsibility to do it. So, yeah. See, yeah, go ahead.
Maybe encourage people to read his
Oh, yeah. LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, Mandela Schaefer, he wrote his own account of this. And he posted it to his corporate website, Microsoft, and he addressed it to all the white people in his life who had advocated for him and made a gigantic difference, and said, okay, look here, white people. You did this for me. Now we're all in the streets about George Floyd. I need you to read this and give money to that. And that took off. It's actually given him a certain profile even within his own corporation as a principled person with something to say that's more moderate than his mother. And I try not to be too crazy because he's kind of conservative, this kid. I don't know what to say about that. These are deep and lengthy questions. I'm going to read them, but I'm not going to respond to them. I'm going to encourage anybody that would like to stay after. We can have maybe a focus group, but these are the kinds of questions that are being asked. What do you think of the idea of reparations for American descendants of slavery? We'd have a really hard time figuring out who was black, for one thing. Okay. What do you suggest we do as white folks in groups and individuals to deconstruct our whiteness? Start with the 1619 Project, which has been, they're trying like heck to ban it. Now in America, when you ban something, it's the best way to get it everywhere. I think they tried to ban Uncle Tom's Cabin, didn't they? Ban it, go on, ban it. Everyone's gonna be, critical race theory, that was a word I'd never heard until 2016. And then I had to go see what it meant. And then I had to go ask a professor to help me understand how to use it in my dissertation. And now everybody's like, we can't have it. I said, I'm still not entirely sure what it is. Somebody asked me this in here, what is the 1619 Project? What is critical race theory? Briefly, the 1619 Project says, those first Africans who were sold in Jamestown, 20-odd Africans, if we start the narrative of our country there, if we start telling the story of our country there, what we will find is that African Americans have perfected our democracy. They said, you guys said all men are created equal. We are here to demand that. And they kept the flame lit. And it's with that narrative we can begin to see ourselves holy as a people. And people are like, well, we can't talk about genocide. We can't talk about torture and enslaving people. No, we can. We can do that. We should do that. Okay.
Do you want to explain critical race theory quickly too? Quickly.
You're gonna be sorry. You're gonna be sorry. I'm gonna read from my dissertation 3 or 4 sentences. CRT, critical race theory, foregrounds an analysis that begins with the declaration that racism is and always has been deeply embedded in the political and social configuration of U.S. society. You want to fight that? it also has a concept called interest convergence. It says the so-called story about civil rights, black progress, voting rights, it says that only came about when it was in the interest of white people for that to come about, in order to avoid international controversy or some other political stake. Interest convergence. And I've been pretty deeply embedded in some of the activist circles, and certainly waves of activism with white folk have come in and gone right out with the tide. In fact, it was over after Trayvon. Black Lives Matter was over, and I was with people who were just, quietly still doing the work, and then the George Floyd thing hit. Suddenly, family and friends and neighbors who I hadn't been speaking to for 5 years were in the street. And so there was another wave, and that wave's gone back out, and now we're gonna get rid of, all of the theorization that came with it. We won't, though. You can't unknow an idea. Let's see. One of the critical things about critical race theory is the notion of counter stories. If I tell the story of Thomas Jefferson and the Founding Fathers, I can say this with neutrality, that there was also a 14-year-old black girl that he kept in his basement and had children with. Okay, call that a mistress, call that a partner, call those his children, call it rape, we can call it all of those things, but let's call it something and talk about it. So a counter story looks at this country and says, and this is how it was for me. And if whiteness thought of itself in a certain way, we saw you thinking of whiteness in a certain way, and we're in a position to tell you what you look like to us. Let us tell you what this looks like to us. And we're like, no. So, you don't want me to go on about critical race theory, do you? No one was white before. I want to say something about whiteness. Okay, someone said, what should I do next? What should we do next? Go back and read your James Baldwin. Go back and read your James Baldwin. Go back and read your Toni Morrison. Okay? Start there. I have no more to say than that. And this is James Baldwin. I've taught English for 40 years. He disappeared from all the anthologies, and now he's having a huge comeback. Hemingway's gone. Nobody teaches Hemingway. Now listen to what Baldwin said in 1986. No one was white before he or she came to America. It took generations and a vast amount of coercion. He says, the belief in whiteness is a lie. Okay? It's a form of cowardice in its necessity of justifying a totally false identity and justifying what can only be called a genocidal history. In the debasement and definition of black people, white people have debased and defined themselves and brought humanity to the edge of oblivion because they think they are white. James Baldwin. Because they are white, they believe, even as no child believes, in the dream of safety. By persuading themselves that a black child's life means nothing compared with a white child's life. I think that will be the title of the next talk, The Dream of Safety. What do you think? I just want to go ahead and read through a few more of these, and I'm going to get off this stage and talk to some of you. Is guilt self-indulgent? Yes, it is. Get past it. And so that you can do the work of radical reconciliation. If you stay in guilt, you're not going to do the work, and you're going to start avoiding all of us again. I'm a racist because I grew up this way. I've been coded this way. What can I do about it? Thank you. Those are the questions we all need to answer and ask and speak frankly. We struggle with raising a black child in a white culture. I often look around in a group here in Northern Michigan and miss the rest of the people. Right on. I feel, I have literally felt a lack of oxygen being in an all-white enclave. I cannot wait to get back to people that I know, and I'm texting them all day, you know, and I want to leave this hard word. If you find yourself, and that's not a hard word, you guys are cool. If you find yourself in all-white enclaves, optically, look around you and find yourself in an all-white enclave, just know, take on faith, or explore the idea that you've deprived yourself of some oxygen. Okay? And if you don't know that you have, find out what you need to know that you have. That's what to do next. I'll say one more thing about black and white intimacy. This again from my Mississippi friend Charles, 83 years old. His father welcomed these white idealistic kids from the Freedom Riders into his home under threat of death and lynching and anything else that might have happened to him. My friend Charles says, folks are rushing to say, I know a black person, I have a black friend, I work with black people, I'm married to a black man, I have a black child. You know, that's one of the things we do. He said, okay, fine. However, do you have a black friend whose house you would stay at comfortably, sleep on their couch, go to their refrigerator, bring your children, and they would do the same in your house? Now that's a call to an intimacy that we've been deprived of because we have been raised so separately historically. So that's from Charles. Gosh, I wonder what I would do if I had it to do again with Mandela. What do you guys think? That's, you know, I mean, he won the Olympics. He was a tennis guy. My mother walked him around Bayview when he was 2 or 3 and said, this is my grandson, look, it's a chocolate Auburn. And I see a Gen Z person over there just cringing. She's like, no. People are like, well, were you angry with her? I said, what can you do about that? What can you say about that? However, I was angry and raised my voice when I came home in Findlay and Mandela's grandmother was reading to him the story Little Black Sambo. And it was the book that she had as a child. It had the big lips. She was reading this to Mandela. You guys know my mom. You guys know my mom. I said, and I came in, I said, Mom, may I speak with you? Took her into the kitchen. I said, you need to put that book down immediately. Do you realize it? And she said whatever she said. The tension was thick. Mandela walked into the kitchen and he's like, Mom, what's wrong? I like that book. I like the pancakes. And that was the end of it. And Lord have mercy. What is one thing white people should do to respond to you and others' experience radical reconciliation, intimacy with the other? Hey, Mary, you think I can get a job at a community college? now that I got the doctor, I'm looking for work.
It doesn't pay much. You have, pay cut.
This doesn't either. Oh, do you believe in the beloved community? John Lewis's call. Well, I better, or I can't get out of bed. Any thoughts about how to get over? Okay, we did that one. Can you speak to why you didn't prepare your son? He was black and you did not want to address it? Well, we were going with, even Mom, honey. When the thing happened in Bowling Green, and actually when I started getting more vocal, my mom got on the phone, she goes, you stop that! Mandela is white! And what she was trying to say was, what protects him is us not doing that. So, yeah.
Wasn't he homecoming king in the white?
He was a homecoming king. Yeah, we got a Finley guy here. Mandela was, yeah, he was just Mandela. He was our,
Always won the Olympics.
Yeah.
and he always won the Olympics and
Tennis tournament.
the tennis tournaments.
And he was bashful about
He was modest, he was humble, and he didn't compete the 5th year because Charlie really needed to get the title one year. Okay?
Philip, it was Philip.
No.
Philip said, oh, Mandela always wins.
You guys, this is a question to break my heart. This is a heartbreaking question. How does Mandela feel about coming back to Bayview? I think how this talk goes off I think whatever I report from today will have a bearing on how he feels about Bayview. But he and I have both we just haven't thought it was a place where we could be our fully human, relaxed selves with what we carry. I'm thinking maybe I can be. I mean, one of these years I'll tell you how Tim Pickett introduced me to jazz, and I started chasing the black experience from that point on. You guys know Bayview kids. We were 1970s boomers. The boomers were our older siblings. They were cool. They were the hippies. We were the younger siblings, right? And we believed in Ralph Waldo Emerson and self-determination. We were Christian Scientists. We were Methodists. We were idealists. And I walked off with all of that formation into the streets and all that naivete. So that's another story. How does Mandela feel about coming to Bayview? I don't know. I think you ought to invite him. He may not think that. When he did come up here, however many years ago for Liz's wedding, he did notice what we all notice when we come up here. He's like, oh, I know everyone and I belong here. It's like you forget that you do. You know, I know everyone here. I felt that here. I know everyone and I belong here. You forget that unless you walk around. Oh, I know everyone and I belong here. Every kid, somebody's grandkid. I think everybody is my playmate, but my playmates are all in their 60s and 70s now. Okay. What do you think of the idea of reparations? I think whatever reconciliation is radical and human and right could direct that conversation. Policy is a whole nother. Thank you so much for sharing and verbalizing what so many of us need to hear and know. I appreciate your skills and ability to deal with such an issue in a graceful and strong way. You are a power. Thank you. Whoever said that, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. We need you. Thank you. I hope that's the case. I sometimes go silent. I'm so terrified by what I'm seeing and hearing. I go silent. I go for weeks and months without opening my mouth. But then I get depressed. So this keeps me from being depressed. Would you please continue with the other 80 pages of your presentation? Glutton for punishment. At some other time, take that up with Jeannie. I bet she'd be all right. Not a judgment, but do you think Mandela might have found it helpful if he'd accepted the invitation to meet the arresting officer? I'm just going to let that, I think that's a valid question. It's one that we've heard a number of times. If he had just complied. I am a white mom, talking about someone in family with 40 years of repeated trauma, from educators to church people to work people. Oh, thank you. I do get it, I think, at least part way. And I'm going to find a way to make these talks be about trauma. Just period. You know, so nobody's sitting there going, well, I don't have a black kid, but we all have a trauma and dark, dark journeys of the spirit, and that's where we need to connect. Thank you for the courage. I would say it's recklessness. Thank you for the courage to come back to Bayview to share Mandela's and your story that gives a new look at racism, white supremacy. You offered a new insight into how to hear, think, and begin. Thank you. Being a part of a solution. Thank you to you, the mother and educator of all God's children. Ooh, I bet you that might have been Carrie. Thank you for your perspective. This is such a powerful story. Thanks for sharing it with us. You know what? Something in your research, can you share those with us? Oh, the next steps, yeah, long talk. Is Mandela adopted? Thank you. What do you suggest we do to deconstruct our whiteness? I think I addressed that. So I think that covers everything that I saw and that you said. And I'd love to just sit and talk with you and as my friends after this. And I'm done being up here.